so pretty. Right, before we get started, I'm sorry, but I've got to take these off. Hello and welcome back to The Vegan Runner. Today we're taking a closer look at the Adizero Pro, a carbon-plated offering from Adidas. In this review we'll take a close look at each component of these speedy beasts, the upper, the midsole and outsole, and we'll also take a quick look at how all of these things come together to affect the overall performance of the shoe. Okay, first up is the upper. This is probably one of the most interesting parts of this shoe. Adidas is calling it Seller Mesh, which sounds a bit like an obscure vegan side dish. Who comes up with these silly names? Ridiculous names aside, Seller Mesh is Adidas's lightest weight upper, and it's specifically designed with distance runners in mind. It's similar to the Nike Next Percent's Vapor Weave. It's very thin, extremely breathable upper, but unlike the Next Percent, it doesn't have that weird scrunch thing going on where the laces meet the toe. I was really impressed with the upper. On my first run, the weather conditions were absolutely horrendous. Torrential rain, 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I had to wade through some lake-sized puddles. The upper was really impressive. It drained in moments. I haven't worn a shoe like this actually for its drainability. It emptied quicker than most of my trail shoes, which are typically designed to drain well. In fact, they were just absolutely fantastic on this front, so great upper. Just give it a better name, please, Adidas. Moving on to other components of the upper, the laces. They're super thin, which I like, and they're supported by a semi-gusseted tongue that wraps around one side of the upper, disappearing under the footplate. It took me a little bit of time and a bit of adjustment to find a good fit and a good lockdown. There was a little bit of tongue slippage at first, but that might have been due to the monsoon-like conditions I was running in. I like the addition of a lot of extra eyelets along the side of the shoe. If you really like customizing and dialing in your fit, then you'll be really happy with the options on the shoe. The heel cup is super minimal, and so is the cushioning around the collar of the ankle. You can see how flexible that this shoe is, or this heel cup is, so not a lot of support, but you'd expect this from a fast race shoe that is trying to be as light as possible. Which, speaking of the weight, this comes in at 225 grams in my size, which is a men's UK 7.5. The perfect weight really for speed work. Just one note, I tend to go a half size up in Adidas shoes at the moment, and this one's no different, so be aware of that when you come to order. It comes in a load of great colorways, which most of which aren't that interesting or exciting, but this one I love. Signal Pink, Cloud White, Shock Pink, Coral. That's its actual name. Poetic. Onto the midsole. Adidas are using a combination of EVA and TPU foams in this shoe. They call them Light Strike and Boost. These foams have been seen before all over their running shoes in recent years, so chances are if you picked up a pair of Adidas shoes in the last few years, you've experienced these foams. I'm not a huge fan of Light Strike foam. For me it's very firm, it feels quite stiff. Fortunately though, the combination of the two foams is a winner. It's cushioned enough for a carbon plated shoe, landing felt soft, and the toe-offs were really bouncy. This is Adidas's first attempt to compete with Nike's famed carbon plate offerings, so it seems apt to compare it to the Next Percent. The stack height on this shoe is a lot lower than the Nike Next Percent, coming in at 21.5 millimeters, almost half the height of the Next Percent's 40 millimeters, and it's immediately noticeable when putting the shoes on. They feel a lot closer to the ground, and there isn't so much of that ankle kind of wobble that I notice when I'm wearing the Nike Next Percent. The heel to toe drop is 9.5 millimeters, and it feels great to me. That's generally where I like the heel to toe drop, so no issues there. The carbon fibre plate, which runs along the midsole, sandwiched by foam, felt good, and it gives a decent pop and spring to your stride. It does add a lot of stiffness to the shoe. You can see they're very rigid, but that's typical of most plated shoes. Okay, and on to the outsole. This is a very funky looking outsole. We'll get into the main talking points but in just a second, but look at those nubbins. Little rubber nubbins. I haven't seen anything like it before, and they look like they're going to break off quite quickly. I was surprised to get back from my first run, an intense interval session, to find that they were all intact and looking as new. It'll be interesting to see how they survive over the long term, and when we get to 100 miles or so, to see how many of those are still left hanging onto this shoe. I'm not quite sure what they add, but they look kind of funky. Moving on to the rest of the outsole, we have a very thin piece of continental rubber covering the mid and forefoot sections. This is also reminiscent of the Vaporfly series. It's thin, keeping the overall weight of the shoe down, and I suspect it will last the lifetime of the shoe, probably about 200 miles or so, and I was really impressed with the grip on my first run. It surpassed my expectations, and despite the conditions and hard running, I didn't slip once. That's pretty amazing for a fast, minimal race shoe. Finally then, my likes and dislikes for the shoe, starting off with the likes. The upper is great, it's very breathable and quick to drain in wet conditions. The price is really good for a carbon plated shoe, which is currently coming in at around £100 to £160 depending on your colourway, which is significantly cheaper than the Nike Next Percent. Not bad for a carbon plated shoe. It's really light, it's perfect for fast-paced training or racing, and finally the grip is exceptional. Oh no, the last thing I like is the Signal Pink, Cloud White, Shock Pink, Coral colourway. Yeah, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But despite its daft name, it is a very, very pretty looking shoe. Arguably the best looking shoe to come out this year. Moving on to my dislikes then, first up it's the Light Strike foam. It's just not for me. It's pretty stiff and a little unforgiving. Fortunately, it's paired with that boost foam, and the mixture is far better than Light Strike alone. The plate didn't give as noticeable a pop as the Next Percent. If it's your first carbon plated shoe, you may notice it a bit more, but if you're coming from something like the Vaporfly or the Alphafly, you're going to have a slightly less exaggerated carbon experience. Altogether, I think this is a great fast shoe. It looks great and offers a lower priced entry point for those looking for their first carbon plated shoe, or a fast plated shoe to train in. It has excellent grip and their upper is superb. There are improvements to be made, especially to the foams used and to somehow just give it a little bit more pop, but overall I don't think you're going to be disappointed with this shoe at this price point. That just about wraps up my first impressions. After 100 miles I'll revisit this review and give an update on how it's performed over time. As always, if you've enjoyed the review, please hit the like and subscribe button, and feel free to share the videos far and wide. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and until the next one, be the best you.